Bow. Looking good and feeling gorgeous. I've had my Red Bull, so now I'm ready. Hello, babies, and welcome back to D-Talk, your safe space to explore your creativity, expand your critical thinking skills, embrace your cringe, and prime yourself for connection. I'm your host, David Day, and today we're going to talk about how loud it is outside of my apartment. I mean, I live downtown Calgary, so there's buses, there's trains, there's all kinds of nonsense going out there. So, maybe I'm just going to provide to you the realism that is my life. So if you hear any of those noises there, but I'm getting off track already. It's the Red Bull for sure. Now, today we are going to talk about doing things alone, going out on your own, going to movies on your own, traveling on your own, how to do things as a single person. And not as like a single person, because you can go out and do things alone when you are in a relationship. Like the monogamy, non-monogamy doesn't really matter for this conversation because it's not anything sexual in nature, although it could be, but I'll leave that up to your discretion. That's not what we're going to be talking about here today. But this topic has been something that has been on my mind as a podcast topic for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's because I love doing things on my own. I love going out on my own. I love doing new things on my own. I love being by myself. That doesn't always read as a good thing, or sometimes people don't think that's a good thing. Sometimes people are nervous about them for themselves. So we're going to talk about all the reasons in which some people are uncomfortable with the idea of going out alone. I have a few studies that we're going to look at here. A helicopter now. That's insane. Also, do you like my curly hair? It's like really long now, like really long. And I did a little bit of eyeliner here in the bottom. Yeah. I remember once I did this when I went to a chiropractor appointment when I lived in Lethbridge. And my chiropractor was like, wow, that looks so good. And every time after, it's probably like 8 appointments, he was like, where's your eyeliner? You don't have that on today. I'm like, yeah, that was once. Anyway, we're going to get into all of the things. And maybe, just maybe, I'll teach you how to do things by yourself, or maybe instill within you a bit more confidence to do something on your own if that's something that you're interested in. And that's my job here in this episode, is to convince you that you are interested in doing something on your own, because it's so much fun. It's so worth it. It's life-changing. It really is. So besties, we're going to get into that. Get your nice beverage, get a snack, get whatever you need to do. Get that laundry rolling. Maybe you're cleaning, maybe you're doing the dishes. I'm glad that you're here. If you're listening on Spotify, consider leaving me a review, write some words. That really helps. If you're watching or listening on YouTube, consider subscribing to the channel. I have so much content on YouTube as well as Instagram and TikTok. There's all this other stuff. So become a certified amateur sleuth and, click on my link tree in the description and you can find all of my things there. Okay, I'm finally ready. Let's get into being on your own. Okay, so the first thing that we need to discuss when we're talking about going out and doing things on your own is this social bias called the spotlight effect. So all that means is that when we go out into the world, it's really easy to think that people are looking at us, right? People are judging us as harshly as we are judging themselves, is a lot of the times what we think. And thankfully, that's not the case, right? So, okay, this idea of the spotlight effect, it's an egocentric bias. It's a social judgment, right? We think that people are out there in the world thinking about us in the same way that we are thinking about us. It's the main character syndrome. It's the main character mindset. And to an extent, you should be the main character of your own life. So I get it, I understand it. But also, people don't care about you that much. People don't care about you that much, right? Unless they care about you that much. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a friend, if it's a family member, if it's a lover, like, obviously that person cares about you. And if you see people out in the wild that know you, then that's different. But, Mary Sue, who's getting off the train with her backpack on, just trying to get to wherever, she doesn't care about you. She doesn't care about you. And I've definitely noticed, like, living in a city now, and I live downtown Calgary, like I said before, and I went from like a rural residential neighborhood to downtown urban center. The way that people can look directly at you, the way that people can maintain eye contact, but still have, it's like it's the lead paint stare. You know what I mean? People can be looking right at you in the face and not even be thinking about you, not even looking at you, not looking at you, not thinking about you. There's nothing going on. Just a ping pong ball bouncing between the empty space between their ears. Like it's just, and I give that too. I look at people and sometimes I like daydream and my eyes end up on somebody, and it doesn't mean that I'm looking at you or judging you, but we've talked about this on D-Talk before, in that It's so heavy. It's so heavy every time I say it, but I'm just going to say it again because I think it's important. A lot of the time, we use other people to bully ourselves. So if somebody's looking at you, you would think, oh, they're looking at me because I don't feel good or confident about my midsection, or they're looking at me because my hair looks bad, or they're looking at me because I'm overly feminine in this moment. When in fact, they may just be daydreaming, right? Another really big example here is if you're somebody that suffers with anxiety, I definitely do and have to a more severe level in the past. But if somebody's laughing around you, it can be really easy to think that they're laughing about you. And that's not to say that sometimes people aren't laughing at you. It does happen. Maybe you're somebody that like maybe somebody's laughing at you, and maybe that's it, because it can be in a good way, in a positive way. I've had people laugh at me in public because I was being funny, and that's great. But if it's not your intention, if they're laughing at you versus with you, then that's the difference there for sure. But it's a really slippery slope here to have somebody laugh around you, and then when that happens you like look down and you judge yourself for what you perceive the most laughable either physical trait or like movement or some attribute about you as a human being, and you deem something as the most laughable, and it's probably the thing that you're most uncomfortable with or that you have the lowest self-esteem in relation to, and then you're just using other people to bully yourself. 9 times out of 10, I would argue that person isn't thinking about what you're thinking about. So be careful. If you're somebody who's interested in doing things on your own, these kinds of biases play a huge role in the anxiety that we feel when we go out on our own, because people are not judging you. On the whole, people don't care about you. And that can sound harsh. It can sound isolating, but it is incredibly freeing. There's a helicopter again, sweet Jesus. So, lesson number one here, before we even consider it, people don't care about you. People don't. Is that good? Are you feeling primed for connection here? People don't care about you. No, people that care about you care about you, but the people that don't care about you, they don't care about you. So just get over it. No. It's of course not that easy. I'm just feeling funny, and it's been a whole day, and I've had a Red Bull now, so that's where we're going. Okay. We've talked about the bias. There is an amount of anxiety that plays into this. There is a slew of mental health issues that any given person may have that would preclude them the comfortable ability in order to engage in activities alone. And I see that, I recognize that. I do believe that I have fit into that category in the past. Mental health issues are absolutely something that should be a priority in your life. And please don't put yourself in physical or mental unsafe situations in order to attain a goal if it is something that is going to put you in harm's way. So if you do need that support, there are mental health supports that are available to you depending on where you live. Please go and seek those things out. Don't take my advice as something that you have to do. I'm not a medical professional. I'm just some girl up here with a microphone and too many opinions speaking from my own experiences. So before we get any further in this, take from this what you will. This is entertainment. This might be a little bit educational, but we're here to have fun. We're here to have fun. We're here to grow. I'm not here to diagnose you, but of course you knew that. Dr. David, I don't have the receipts. One day I will have my doctorate. I'm about 6 years in. About 6 to go. That's not to say I don't know if I want my doctorate, but I'm 1/3 of the way through my master's program. That's something. Okay, anyway. Okay, now that I told you I'm not qualified, I'm going to tell you now how I'm qualified to provide anecdotal evidence as to why going out by yourself, doing things on your own is such a fun thing, and I think you need to do it. So, there's a helicopter again. They're really just going at it. Hammer and tongs out there. So I grew up just a puddle of anxiety. I was a crier. I couldn't do any of the things. I was very socially anxious. I weighed about 300 pounds. I was exceedingly uncomfortable with my body, with my femininity, with my queerness. I hated everything about myself. That's pretty much it. I didn't really have any good positive relationships. I wasn't shown how to meaningfully navigate emotions or anything, any of that. And I struggled so incredibly hard and still have the residual struggles to this day from that experience as a child and adolescence and coming of age, you know. But there was a point where I realized that social skills was something that was important to me, specifically because I mean, humans, we're social beings. We're social animals. We want to get together. We want to interact with other people. And we want to feel connected. And I think that's a reason that a lot of people feel anxiety when they think about going places on their own, because it feels like there's a lack of connection there. So before we get any farther in this, you need to think about what your end goal is in going out somewhere by yourself, right? I've gone out by myself with the intention of making new friends. I've gone out with the intention of not reaching out to anybody around me, being on my own the whole night, having a nice time, going home alone, right? Well, okay, in what we're going to talk about today, I'm always going home alone because this isn't the, oh, Home Alone, great movie, because this isn't the sexual side of this. But a lot of these things could be applied to that. I'm sure you can use your imagination there for that one. I'm loving the curly hair. It does, however, sit in front of my face. So then my peripheral vision tricks me into thinking like a witch is coming at me at any given moment. Anyway, not the point. Okay, so why am I qualified to give this? At some point, I realized that social skills were really important to me and I wanted to develop them. And I have grown up in an incredibly privileged position that a lot of travel has been made available to me. And I remember, I think the first trip that I took by myself, the first time I ever flew on a plane by myself, I believe, was to Switzerland in 2017. I think that's right. I would have been 21. Yeah, I was 21. That was the first time I ever flew somewhere by myself. And that's really when I started to figure out too that going out and doing things by myself was something that I would be interested in. Or rather, I was more interested in letting go of the anxiety that was holding me back from doing those fun things. Because for me, it's not necessarily the gratification anymore of doing things on my own. It's the gratification of doing something that I wanted to do. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to go to a drag show, would I rather go by myself or not go at all? I would rather go by myself, right? And like, I have a beautiful group of friends. They're not always available, and I'm not always great at reaching out at an appropriate amount of time before the event. I think it's like if the show's on Friday, I'm like texting them Friday morning, thinking it's Thursday morning, being like, hey, do you want to go out on the 10th? And they're like, today's the 10th, girl. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Anyway, so my bad planning skills, but sometimes you don't always want to be with anybody. Okay, so, but that's at the place that I am at now. In the very beginning, I was more motivated by just the self-satisfaction of being able to do things on my own because I just didn't have that wherewithal. I didn't have that capacity before, and I come from a long line of fear and anxiety, to be honest. And I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of the generations that come before us operate from fear and anxiety and misinformation. It's just the way that it is. And going out on your own can be seen as unsafe. Some people view you as a loser if you do that and things like that. Like with the spotlight effect, how we talked in the beginning here, that's not always the case. But if somebody looks at you when you're doing something on your own and they think you're a loser, they're like, it sounds so basic, but I really want you to hear this and understand this. If somebody sees you doing something on your own and they think you're a loser, they are the ones that think they're a loser, right? They are using you to bully themselves in your mind, and that is not your responsibility, in the same way that it's not anybody else's responsibility for the ways in which you bully yourself with their assistance. Right? With their unaccompanied assistance. They don't know that they're helping you bully yourself. It's you who's taking that. So honestly, there is a part of this where you have to look at what people think or your perceptions of what people think, and you have to go, oh, okay, well, whatever. Like you just have to not care. You just have to not care. And the community of people that I spend my time around, mostly the queer people in the community, you know, those queers out there doing that gay stuff. And and it's not just the queers. Those are just the people who I care about the most. Not that I don't care about everybody else. Okay, I got to get myself out of this hole. I was a young queer person, so I have a special affinity for helping people who are young queer people. Anyway, not the point. I do see a lot of that anxiety. And to be honest, I can't give you any advice other than keep going. Keep going. There is nothing that time and experience cannot help you with. Keep going. Keep doing the things that you are interested in. Keep attempting to grow the skills that you are interested in growing. Follow your interests, follow your passions. Even if it's just 1% a day, that becomes exponential growth at one point. And honestly, you aren't a reliable judge on your own growth. It sounds so wild to say, but you just aren't. You can't. You spend every day with yourself. How are you going to be able to meaningfully see changes across time if you're looking at it from such a macro perspective? You need to no, is that opposite? From such a close-up perspective, you need to be able to back out. And if you're putting such harsh judgments on yourself, it's almost impossible to take a step back and really realize what you've done. But anyway, okay, so there's a huge mental piece to this. That's what this section is all talking about here. Be kind to yourself. You will be okay. You know what I want to say? Here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to say. It's cool because people are listening to this podcast. Which is such a silly thing to say. But in the beginning, it was just like, basically in the beginning of me making this podcast, like it's basically me talking to my mom. I don't even know if she's still listening to this. Hi, Mom, if you're out there. Anyway, I am just going to be honest. I'm just going to be honest and put this out here. And I don't know because I haven't heard this talked about. And I do have an upcoming appointment with a psychiatrist to see if I actually am diagnosed with OCD and a few other things that might be in there, because I didn't realize that the experiences I went through weren't necessarily something that everybody went through. And a lot of this comes from being alone and going out and doing things on your own. When I would try and do things alone, I would sweat profusely. I would shake. I don't know how to describe it other than like it felt like my body would get so hot that I would just pass out. And I imagine this similar feeling of like, you know how bunnies can die from fear? It felt like that. I would feel like my body was going to stop working. I was going to go into shock and I was going to pass out. Like the heat that I would feel in my face, the anxiety that I would feel, the fear. I don't know what it was exactly that I was fearful of necessarily, but and it's not necessarily exactly doing things alone. I would feel those things when I was out with other people, but if other people were with me, those things were lessened, right? So much of this was me being terrified of being seen. And it's because my self-esteem and self-confidence was so low. I don't know how else to explain that. Just a gut-wrenching fear and essentially the feeling of panic if I was ever around somebody who I didn't trust, which is most of the world, right? We have our people that we trust. We have our circle, the ones that we would trust. And there's different like rings and there's like concentric circles, of like who you would trust everything with and who you would just trust this with, and kind of moves out your circle of trust, right? But most of the world is not in that circle. So I had to build the skills to be able to be comfortable being present around people that I didn't know. And that's not just about being alone and going places on your own, but that's definitely heightened in that. So the reason I bring that up is because I have moved through an incredible amount of anxiety. I don't know if you're like comparing yours to mine. I don't think that's necessarily meaningful. If you can identify with that, I hope that helps you in some way right now. But I knew, even though I was feeling all of those scary feelings, I knew that I wanted to work through them. Like, I just would be so uncomfortable. And I do feel bits and pieces of those uncomfy moments when I'm out on my own or just out in general now. But it's not to the point where I feel that level of anxiety. Like, I don't shake anymore. I would literally be shaking. I would not be able to say words. If somebody asked me a question and I was out on my own, I would just stumble. And then sometimes I would end up yelling, or sometimes I would just mumble and nobody would be able to hear anything. So it was like one extreme or the other. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And hey, maybe you suffer from the same amount of anxiety and you're not interested in changing it or working through that. And I think that's valid too, but it might be worth looking into. So take that with what you will. That doesn't Take from that what you will. I'm going to go back a little bit here. We have to think about, what is your goal? Now, if you're going out in the beginning, I think it's nice. I think it's fun. It's coming out of the gate hard. It's coming out of the gate swinging. But I think you should go out on your own, by yourself, and try and make friends. Just go out there and try and make friends. I love doing this. I've done this many, many times. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you don't find friends. Sometimes you burn out and you're not able to make those connections, and that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't always go in the way that you want it to. Kind of like something that I'm not talking about in this episode, but that's a different point. But it was through the skills I developed while cruising that I was able to go out and make friends, which is just Mind blowing. Anyway, mom, don't look up what cruising means. Okay, it's not going to be good. You're not going to like it. Going out and trying to make new friends. I have two really great examples for this. Number one. Well, okay, no, even going back a little bit further. So I started traveling by myself, and now I have traveled so much on my own. I've been to Switzerland on my own. Where else have I been on my own? I forget. I just went to LA this year on my own. The year before. Well, and then COVID happened, but LA wasn't the first one. I've been to Texas on my own. Some of those were like work trips and this and that, but I love traveling on my own. I love traveling on my own. I also love traveling with people, so it can be both. I love traveling. I love things. I love doing things. I love going out and doing things. So if that's you, if you're somebody who likes things and doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert, I think those labels can be a little bit too easy to toss ourselves into and resign ourselves to not working on ourselves and resign ourselves to no more self-growth, even if that's something that we might be potentially interested in. So if you think you're an introvert, but you don't really feel satisfied with your extrovert skills when and if you want to utilize them, it might be worth looking into, because I always thought I was an introvert. And then I started to gain the skills to be an extrovert. And I was like, oh, this is actually where I fit 100%. Anyway, might be the case for you. So my first example here is when I went to Texas last year, and I was in Austin, Texas for a week. I was there for a conference, South by Southwest EDU, which was an educational conference that I had the best time at. And I went out every night that I was in Texas to a different drag club. There were many. Austin, Texas drag is so good. So many great queens that I still follow on Instagram. Love them. Shout out to them. Lori Bird. Love Lori Bird. Hilarious. She's going to be on Drag Race one day. If she wants to be. I don't know. That's not always the goal. Anyway, and I went out to all of these different drag clubs, and I went and I watched the drag, and I had a great time, and I gave them their dollar bills, and, like interacted with people in the smoking area and had a good time. So met Naomi Smalls out of drag, like just had a great time, right? Didn't make any particular meaningful connections, but it wasn't really necessarily my goal. I was on vacation. I just wanted to go out and have a couple of drinks in a queer space and see some breastplates, and like I wanted to be gay. That was the thing. So I went out and did that. Then on my way home from Texas, my flight from Minneapolis back to Calgary got rescheduled, and I took the night in Minneapolis. And as I was in the Uber to my hotel in Minneapolis, as there's like a foot of snow on the ground, I'm like, drag clubs in downtown Minneapolis. And I found one that was directly across the street from my hotel. I'm like, okay, that's great. And I was like, you know what, David, tonight I'm going to go out and I want to make friends. I want to make friends with people who are like going somewhere else after this drag show. I want to find people who are like on a night out and they're doing a little bit of a hop, because I don't know where to go and I don't have the time to research because the show's starting in 8 minutes and I'm just getting out of my Uber to get into the hotel right now. So I want to go find people. So that was my goal. I went in, I watched the show. It's kind of like how society perpetuates like hookup culture, and like me being like a person who's going out there to like pick up chicks, like pick up sticks, but pick up chicks, like pick up sticks, but pick up chicks, a little bit different, but it's not that at all. The only thing I'm looking for from these people is a little bit of friendship and just conversation and fun times, right? So across the room, I see these two women, and they're laughing and they're having like a good time laughing, and they're like belly laughs. I'm like, okay, the energy over there feels pretty good. I like the way that sounds. And the show ended, whatever. I paid for my tab and they're sitting over there talking. And I walked over, and the only thing I said, I was like, you two seem so fun. And they were like, stop it. You seem so fun. Sit down. What's your name? And I was already in. I spent the next like 4 hours with those two. Amber and Sarah. It was great. From Minneapolis, we went upstairs. We had another drink at the bar. They took me to a different club. There were go-go dancers. It had all these fun things. I did have to escape because I did drink too much, and I was going to pass out downtown Minneapolis, and none of my friends or family knew where I was because I was supposed to be landing in Calgary that night. Anyway, not the point. Kind of unsafe. But I had to quickly get into an Uber because and get back to my hotel room and get on a plane with the same clothes the next morning because I didn't get my checked bag because my flight was postponed. Anyway. So yeah, that was a great time going out. My second little story here about going out on my own is 2 years ago. So it was about 2 years ago, and this was the beginning of me getting into drag. I wasn't quite ready to be performing in drag, but I was watching drag, and I loved going to drag shows. I still do, but they don't have the same kind of like magic and allure to me anymore. Oh, that's sad to say out loud, but it's true because it's something that I really feel I participate in now. Like, I am a drag artist, I am a drag performer, I do all these things. It's not really an aspiration for me anymore. Like, it is, but I don't feel this big disconnect between the world of me and drag. And before I did, and I was really allured by that mystique, Summers Madison, of the whole thing. Anyway, so I went out to the palace. I didn't live in Calgary yet. I lived in Lethbridge. I think I came up on my own, and I was going to stay in Calgary for just 2 days, and I was going to see Pure Pride and a different show. And there were just these queens, and there were just these queens that I really wanted to see. It was the first time that I put on makeup and went out in that makeup. And the makeup was really bad. The makeup was really bad, but it's okay. It doesn't matter because I was still learning. I mean, it's always okay, even if you're not still learning. We're all still learning. You're never done learning. Okay, get it together, David. Anyway, so I went out and I'm standing in the Palace Theatre in Calgary, if you're familiar. And there's like this bottom kind of like dance floor circular pit that's like lowered by a few steps. And I knew I wanted to be right in the front because I knew it would fill up. And of course, I was there early and I was standing there on my own and I just felt so awkward. But I was like, I'm here for the show. But I, yeah, I probably would feel that some amount of like anxiety going through that now, but it definitely wouldn't be the same level as before. And I remember there was a woman that made eye contact with me from across the dance floor, and she walked right over to me. You know, you can feel that confidence. She walked right over to me and she was like, "Are you waiting for someone? Or are you here on your own?" And I was like, "I'm here on my own." She's like, "Oh, you should come join me and my friends over here." And I'm like, "All right, yeah, let's do it." And I went over, and there was a group of people that didn't look like they were together. And the different girl leaned over and she was like, "Were you here on your own?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Yeah, I think she's just collecting us." So this woman went around to the people that she could tell were there on their own. And then there was just like a group of 6 of us who just became friends in the front. So we're like interacting, having fun. The show started. There's people all around. And then there was this different girl who wasn't part of our group of misfits. No, but you get what I mean. There was another girl behind me. I now know her name is Maddie, and she's one of my good friends now. It's so funny. We're watching these queens perform. It was like Near Enough, Dana Hart. Somebody else was on stage. This was a long time ago. So we're watching them, and somebody had a shoe malfunction. I forget. I honestly forget most of the details, but somebody had a shoe malfunction on stage. So the queen's like bending over and like. I don't know if it was lacing a boot. I don't know if they broke a heel. I don't remember what was going on. But this drag performer is fumbling around with their shoe, and the girl beside me, Maddie, leans over and zooms in on her phone, and she's recording this queen struggling with her boot. And I lean over and I was like, "You bitch, that's hilarious." Because like it's rotted, it's awful, but it's also kind of hilarious because I love when things go wrong on stage. I really do. As a thespian, as a drama teacher, as a regular teacher, I love when things go wrong. Some of the most beautiful, meaningful, impactful things in our world happen when things go wrong. That's not always the case. Because we had that funny moment, we started talking to each other, and it was just by her attitude that I knew I was interested in getting to know her. Because I don't know if you feel this, but when you meet people out in the wild, sometimes it's just the way they smile, the way they laugh, the way they hold eye contact. Sometimes you can just tell you're going to be interested in being friends with somebody. And I could just feel that from this person by the way her facial expressions were, and especially after that recording the mishap nonsense. But the lady on the other side was buying me drinks the whole night. The one that originally came up to me and brought me to the front. She was buying me drinks all night. And then Maddie leans over and she was like, "Is that your friend?" And I was like, "No, I honestly don't know that person, but we're both here, so we're having a good time." And anyway, so I don't remember the first lady's name because we never talked after that, but she bought me many drinks that night, and then I made a friend out of Maddie on the other side of me. So sometimes you can have such a beautiful experience by going out on your own and doing things like that. Is it always going to be fun? Are you always going to get free drinks bought for you and meet new friends and create like meaningful, fulfilling relationships? No, it's not always going to be like that. But as Naisha Lopez says, anything you do is a risk, and you need to remember that. So there are some safety concerns here as well, as you might have thought about. And it's different because I am on some part a masculine presenting person because of sexism. I don't know if that leaves me at a lower level of being stolen or something like that. So there are safety implications here about going alone and going by yourself places as well. And I think it's something that you need to be thinking of, but it's not something that you need to be limited by. So be safe. If you want to share your location with somebody on the nights that you're out and doing that, that could be smart. It could not make a difference. I don't know. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork here. We're going to take a little bit of a break. So I will be right back. Okay, babies, we are back. Now, we are going to continue our discussion here on how to do things alone, the purpose of doing things alone, maybe a little bit of the psychology and the neuroscience behind why we struggle with doing things alone, and maybe why it can be anxiety inducing, and maybe some of the limiting factors here as only really to do with our mindset. I'm only interested here in discussing the limiting factors that we have control over with our mindset. There are, of course, neurological conditions, mental health issues that make this more or less difficult for any person. There are so many extenuating circumstances, so please don't take what I'm saying as that you have complete autonomy over your situation, because you may not. However, I do encourage you to be critical and discerning over the facts that you may use to limit yourself. That's all I'm going to say there. So the majority of things that I enjoy doing alone have to do with like going to shows, going to drag shows. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with like going out to eat on my own in like a sit-down restaurant in particular. I think that would be really difficult. I think that would be really different and interesting as well. I've never tried that. Actually, no, that's totally a lie. I've absolutely eaten alone in restaurants. It's mostly been while I'm traveling. It's always been when I've been traveling. But it's interesting how it all comes down to the mindset, because when I'm traveling and I'm in a sit-down restaurant on my own, I don't feel weird about being there on my own because I flew here. Because if somebody were to sit down and be like, oh, like, what are you doing? What's your name? What's your deal? I would be able to say, oh, my name's David. I'm from like Calgary or Alberta if I was somewhere. And for whatever reason, that idea of me traveling makes me eating alone feel more okay in my head. And I have a feeling that you might agree. But if I was in my home city, you know, downtown Calgary, eating alone, and somebody asks that, and I'm like, yeah, I just live a few blocks away, that might be a little bit more anxiety inducing for me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because if anybody I knew saw me out alone, I might be concerned that they would think I'm a loser because I'm eating by myself, which it sounds like a real concern until you say it out loud. That's something there too. Find somebody in your life that you really trust and talk about these things with them, because it can sound really serious and it can sound like a big concern until you say it out loud and you're like, oh, that's actually kind of silly. Thanks for being the ears I needed, because sometimes you say the things you need to hear. And that's on that. Anyway, so yeah, if you're interested, go out and eat on your own. I think that's fine. You need to eat. You're a human being. Go eat. Do it. I was gonna say just now, if you want to go out by yourself, send me a DM and I'll go out by myself with you. But that doesn't really make sense. Maybe we can plan it that we go to the same restaurant and we'll just sit at our own tables across the restaurant. And like every few, you know, maybe like 3 times throughout the meal, we'll like look at each other and wink and be like, nice. So silly. There is this idea that I see in the research that a lot of people feel more comfortable doing things alone when it seems like a necessary task. But when it's something that is seen as unnecessary or for fun or extraneous, it can be seen as less desirable and more anxiety inducing. But I never really thought of me going to Costco as me doing something by myself, because I grocery shop by myself. I do so many things by myself. I do all my errands by myself for the most part. So why is that thought of differently than me going to sit down and eat dinner on my own? It's that societal idea of you have to do those things, so it would make sense that you're doing it alone. But if this is a choice, if you're going out of your way to engage in something for fun, that has to be done with other people, which is not true, kind of gross, and really boring. So if there's something you're interested in doing, I encourage you, go on your own and try it. There's something that comes up in the research that's really interesting is most people that feel fear going into doing something on their own do not fear that, or do not have that same level of fear both at the end of that initial experience and at the beginning of the subsequent experience. So if you're feeling that amount of anxiety and fear in the beginning, it's just something that you have to start. It is like a band-aid. You have to rip it off and you can continue to challenge yourself. If you go out have a restaurant experience, a meal on your own, and it was good. Next time, don't bring your phone. Don't bring any distractions. Sit there, be present, and just be. It's so hard to do. It's so hard to do. Once you do, like, a huge part of this is being comfortable on your own. And Mary, you can be in a you can look for your sense. There's this quote that I heard when I was going through a breakup, so it was particularly relevant for me at the time, but I cannot forget it. You can search for a sense of self, or you can search for a partner. One leaves you with a sense of self, and one leaves you with a partner. And it is a false dichotomy, because you could possibly search for your sense of self and search for a partner at the same time. But I do find that in our society, sometimes our search of purpose can be conflated with our search for a partner. And if your sense of purpose is derived by your partner, that's not good. It's not healthy, because at the end of the day, you are going to leave this world alone. You are. No relationship ends unless you're gonna Thelma and Louise it, right? Like, one of you is leaving first. Even the best love stories have tragic endings. You need to get yourself to a spot where you're going to be okay if and when that happens, whether through death or divorce or anything like that. But I know this might seem like a reach, or that I'm getting on a tangent now, but if you're not comfortable going out on your own to a restaurant, how are you going to be comfortable on your own in any other aspect of your life? So if you're not comfortable going out to a restaurant on your own, traveling on your own, it could mean that you're uncomfortable in other pieces of yourself and in other pieces of your life. And that might not be true, but that was my experience both with myself and the people around me. So that might be something worth looking into here. And really, at the end of the day, the majority of this research shows that people worry a lot about doing things alone. And we think that we don't enjoy the experiences that we have on our own. And it really shows us how much we put the value of other people's experiences of us above our own. A lot of the times we think we will not enjoy an experience if we do it alone. But in the end, the research does show that you may very well enjoy it just as much, if not more, if you do it on your own. Again, the research is showing that most people are not judging you, and that our ideas of who is judging us is vastly not appropriately lined up. Like, we think people are judging us so much more than they actually are. People can look at you and not be judgmental of you. This is one thing that I learned. If you're wearing words, if you got words on your body, girl, people are reading that. People are reading that. I grew up morbidly obese, so I was uncomfortable with my midsection and just pretty much everything on my body. But I would wear text across my chest, and I was uncomfortable with my chest. So then people would be looking at my chest, and I'm like, stop looking at my chest. But I'm like, babe, there's a word there. Human brains read words. Anyway, it's just so, I give that example because there are so many things that go on in our minds that it's the false attribution theory, right? We think that something happens for a reason when that's actually not even close to the reason why. It's just because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. So be mindful of the ways in which you use other people to judge yourself if it's an innate reaction. It could be the possibility, but it's usually not. It's usually not. Unless they're leaving you hate comments on YouTube videos, you're probably fine. Which happens to me a lot, but that's okay because I'm a content creator and I purport myself as a public figure. So if you're going to leave a hate comment on this, make it a good one so I can put it in my reading mean comments video. Okay, babies, before we finish up here, I'm going to leave you with some key takeaways and things that you need to keep in mind if you are attempting to spend some time by yourself, engage in some solo activities that you're interested in doing. You need to embrace the awkwardness. You're going to feel awkward. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel chunky. You're not going to want to do it, but you need to do it anyway if it's something that you're interested in. A big part of our jobs as human beings is to decipher what is actually dangerous to us as an individual, because you can in fact teach yourself and you can teach your nervous system that you are unsafe even when you are, because your sense of safety is something that can be relative. So if you have grown up in situations that have been filled with anxiety and fear and trauma, like I have, again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm going to see one in a few days, so don't listen to me, but also listen to me. just be mindful in the ways in which you perceive your own personal level of safety. So why I'm saying this is I want you to push yourself, but don't push yourself too far. I think you're going to know, but push yourself beyond the first few levels of feeling uncomfy. But at some point you need to know your limit and don't cross any personal boundaries. But you're going to feel awkward, you're going to feel weird. You're not going to want to do it once you set yourself up. If you write it in your calendar, I'm going out this Friday at 5, and then it's Friday at 4:30, and then you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. Do it. It's okay to feel awkward. It's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to not want to do it, but give it a shot. This is true for anything. Okay, again. Takeaway number 2. People don't care about you. People are not paying attention to you in the ways that you might perceive them to be. The spotlight effect is a real thing. Nobody is as interested in you as you are in yourself. So do not use other people to bully yourself. When you hear somebody laughing, instead of feeling awkward and they look like a safe person to approach, go ask them what was funny. If you're in a club setting, they'll probably tell you, and it might be you're in. Number 3, embrace the freedom. You do not have to take care of anybody. You get to make all your decisions. Do you want to go here for 5 minutes and then leave and then go somewhere else? And then maybe the whole night ends in you eating nuggets in your car, and that's great. Do whatever the hell you want because you're by yourself. That's the point. The point is to have a good time on your own, to develop the skills for you to be able to be happy on your own. Because that crosses the line between being alone and being lonely. Everybody is alone at some point in their life, but the skill of not feeling lonely is exactly that, a skill. You don't have control over sometimes if you are alone, but you do have control over sometimes you feeling lonely, and you developing these skills of being okay doing things on your own with or without the positive interaction or reinforcement from others is a skill that makes your life so much more livable. I'm dropping facts up here. Okay, number 4, it's gonna get better. You're gonna get better. It's just like anything else in the world. You develop the skills to be able to do it more regularly. It becomes filled with more satisfaction. You meet new people. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. And the thing is too, so my story, for example, where that woman was buying me a bunch of drinks, that was then a skill for me that I was able to go out and use on other people. And I've done that before. I went up to somebody that was on their own and I'm like, are you on your own? Because I'm building a little group of people who came on their own up here at the front. Would you like to come join me? And then I go and buy them a drink. And like if you spend time around the people that have the skills you want to learn, it's just going to be easier for you to gain those skills if you're just paying attention and spending time around them. Number 5, this is something that you're listening to. If you're interested in it, if it's something maybe that you've tried a few times, you're just so ahead of the game. You will be so ahead of the game with social skills. The level of social skills that exist in our society out today, and me being able to go out and navigate experiences on my own has helped me in my personal life, in my professional life, in my romantic life, in everything. Everything has been positively impacted by me being able to go out on my own and do things. It's a very all-encompassing kind of attitude and worldview. So it's not just going out on your own and making friends and blah, blah, blah. No, it's developing the skills and confidence that will transfer to every facet of your life. And you will be amazed at what skills come popping out of you when it's the most important time for them to do so. Yeah, babies, honestly, I just want you to have a good life. I do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, and I developed these skills because I wanted my life to be more fun. I wanted my life to be more adventurous, and I didn't want to rely on other people because I'm an only child. And I don't like relying on other people to have fun. I don't like relying on other people for anything because I'm a Virgo, not to give myself labels. Actually, I used to be a Virgo. Spencer's going to hate me if she's listening to this because she loves to call me on my Virgo line. Speaking of only children, next week's episode on D-Talk, I sit down with my bestie Amber and we talk about being only children, spoiled brats, people who can't take any advice and... all the, the only child syndrome. There's actually, now that I think about it, there's probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are only children, because how else would you take my attitude if you don't understand it? No, anyway, so that's coming next week. I'm very excited for that episode. So yeah, babies, that is the end of this week's episode of D-Talk. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you're listening on Spotify, consider leaving a review, write me the words. It really does make a big difference. And if you're listening on YouTube, consider subscribing to the channel, leave a comment, tell me what you think. It really helps to support the work that I'm doing here. And I really appreciate you for doing that. Go out there, do things on your own, have the best time. If you want to DM me and tell me how going out on your own was, even if it's a flop, I would still love to know if it went poorly, because sometimes it is going to go poorly. I didn't tell any of my flop stories. There's probably lots of them, but maybe I blocked that out because none are coming to mind right now. Anyhow, I appreciate you so much for listening. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful for you in any way. And if it wasn't, I hope I made you folding your laundry or washing your dishes go a little bit faster. Make sure to drink your water, mind your business, take your medication if you need to, set a timer. Do that thing that you've been putting off. So again, thank you so much for interacting with my content. I really appreciate you. And until next week, goodbye.